Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. I'm Lorie Burch, your host. Join us as we discuss and unpack wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate law in a way that's actually informative, interesting, and, well, hopefully entertaining. Because if you don't have a will, the state of Texas has one for you. Let's dive in. For those of you who are listening, you have no idea. For those of you who are watching, you're like, who's this other person? So we are joined today by a guest. I was going to say a special guest, but then I was like, everybody always says a special guest. So it's just a guest.
A
special
guest.
A guest who is special. Patricia Devine, but you all may know her. It's not her name. It's what's on her credit card, but it's not her actual name. Why are we not doing the topic of how people don't know their own names? Because this comes up so much. Because
hey, Burch,
Pattie
we can switch to that right this second.
Pattie falls into that. We were at a dinner where I'm sure the waiter really loved us because it was like 9 or so of us, and we're all doing individual checks. And so they hand the credit cards back, and it's like, well, here, I'm handing them out. And then there's one that says Patricia Devine, and I'm like, who the hell is Patricia Devine? I'll tell you who. It is Pattie Vargas. It is one Pattie Vargas. So, Pattie, introduce yourself.
Why, you've done a fabulous job up to this.
Have I?
Yeah, really.
So if I were introducing you before you were getting up to speak, what I just did, nailed it.
No.
Okay. Well, then why don't you give us, and then you tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll talk about how we know each other.
Okay. You get to tell all the fun Lorie stories.
We don't have enough time. So
I'm Pattie Vargas. Any time.
I'm Pattie Vargas. I am from Sacramento, California, and I am a grief recovery coach. And I specifically work with families who have lost somebody to substance use disorder. So that's me.
Okay. And how did we meet?
Oh, in a galaxy far, far away. We met through American Businesswomen's Association and traveled together, served on a couple boards together.
Well, we were on the national board of directors for the American Businesswomen's Association together. I was a little District 2 vice president. Don't ask me what states are in that. It's Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think that's all. Mississippi?
Nah.
We don't have Mississippi? District 2? So would that be D3? I don't know.
No,
anyway,
I even less than you do now.
This district setup was way before Hunger Games, although it's really unfortunate because I kind of wish Hunger Games was out when we were on the board because we would have had a lot of fun with that. So there are 6 districts in ABWA. No, don't ever call it that. That's not a thing. It is ABWA. So Sam, do not get tempted.
There's actually 7 districts.
Well, I was getting to that.
Okay.
We do relegate certain members to District 7, but it doesn't actually exist.
No.
But anyway,
District 13.
But Pattie, when I was first elected to the board, was the National Secretary Treasurer, or as I one time mistyped it, and she'll never let me live it down, National Secretary Treasurer. So, yes, Pattie is a national treasure.
I am a national treasure.
Yes. And I don't even know how we became good friends. I know it's a mystery to everybody.
Yeah.
How it happened. We have nothing in common. Anyway, so Pattie's visiting, and I thought, what better thing to do than to have her just live a few days in the life of Lorie Burch. So I've done nothing special at all. She is just, she's gotten to witness work and Kimberly and Lorie banter, the crazy banter kids, all of the above. And you're welcome, Pattie Vargas. So obviously,
and eat your lovely staff. So
Thank you.
and I thought you said eat my lovely staff, and I'm like, what? Meat.
You get to have lunch with us on Thursday.
I did.
Yeah.
Friday? Yeah.
Thursday.
Uh-huh.
Thursday for sure. So very happy to have you here, visiting in general, but also on the podcast. And you didn't you have a podcast at one time, Pattie? Because I feel like I was on it. You talked about women's leadership.
Yeah. It wasn't a podcast. It was a radio show.
Oh, is there a difference?
Nice.
Yeah. It was with that other organization that I was telling you about earlier.
Oh, okay. We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about Bruno.
So, obviously in all the discussions we have when it comes to estate planning, wills, trust, probate, we tackle a lot of issues. And one of the things is, besides the kind of legal component to it, is just one of the things we always try to get across to people, especially when they're doing the planning ahead of time, which is really the best time to do it, is the fact that this isn't just, a contract that's going to go into effect at some point. Like when your family is going through this, it's going to be during a time of grief, of tremendous grief. And it's not when people are at their best. It's not when you want them to have to jump through a bunch of legal and bureaucratic hoops. It's not when you want them to have to dole out a lot of money when they're uncertain of how they're going to continue in life. And so there is a lot that we work around when it comes to grief. And then on the probate side of things, we are only dealing with people who've lost a loved one. Because I really don't know why you would name someone you didn't care for as your executor, unless I can think of certain situations that, you'd want to do that. But for the most part, and I personally have lost someone close to me. And so I've experienced this firsthand, but we were going to talk about stupid things people say to people who are grieving. Or if we're not delicate on the show because it's called, one of us knows what that we're talking about, and the other one is you. So the idea is that we're trying to be a little bit, tongue in cheek, but really try to help people understand certain concepts that they themselves may not be as familiar with or think they're experts on. And certainly when it comes to grief, there's a lot of things that people think that are the best things to say or aren't thinking at all. And these are some things you should try to avoid. And so Pattie, because she has a lot of the really personal experience that she has to, in whatever degree she wants to share that, this is an open forum. And then some things that she would advise us and, really advise us as a team as well, because we're dealing with our clients and their family members, and we want to make sure that we're not saying anything that is insensitive or can be taken the wrong way. So, Pattie, what are some of your thoughts here?
Well, the problem is that we live in a very grief illiterate society. We don't go in for big displays of grief and so forth. I'm talking about like in Western civilization and stuff. We look at that as being, uncouth or embarrassing or so forth. So we don't really educate people on how to deal with grief, how to manage grief, how to show up for people who are grieving and so forth. So it sort of stands to reason. Like you said, Lorie, the worst time to try to make a plan is when you need a plan. The worst time to try to know what to say to somebody who is grieving is when you need to be able to comfort somebody or say something. So we would be well served if we did teach people about it, if we normalize the fact that people die, accidents happen, everyone doesn't get to live to be 95. So we It's just something that is uncomfortable for folks. And, one thing, people will often say, if you don't know what to say, don't say anything at all. That is the absolute worst thing that you can do. If you don't know what to say, just say, I am so sorry. And I know from personal experience that carries a ton of weight, more than some of the other stuff that people say. So yeah, that's kind of sort of an opener to what we can talk about here.
So I'll offer a few things, and I will say I actually have some personal questions, because it's not like there's one black and white set of rules of what to say and not to say, because some people may resonate with the way some people will say things and other people won't. One thing that I know that I've heard go both ways is saying, I can't imagine what you're going through. So that right there, I've heard some people say, well, I really appreciate that. Like, you're acknowledging that this is something that's overwhelming and it's personal to me. And I've heard other people who take offense to something like that. It's like, what do you mean you can't imagine? It's like it disconnects them rather than acknowledging them. And so that's a question I have for you, Pattie, is what kind of thoughts do you have around, I can't imagine what you're going through?
Yeah, that one is a two-edged sword, because it depends on who it is that's saying it. If it's somebody who doesn't know you well, then I think it's an okay thing to say. And you can say, well, thank you. I appreciate that you recognize the depth of my loss or something. If it's somebody you're really close to and they say, I can't imagine what you're going through, I have said, try. Just try.
Yeah.
Really nice if you tried to step into my shoes. That's not appropriate to somebody who you're not close enough to either, but if it's somebody that really ought to understand why your loss is so great, then I think that's an appropriate thing to say back.
So I'm going to throw out one just from personal experience, but I'm more just what I've gone through and not an expert or someone who trains or coaches or has any sort of education or credentials around this. But in my experience, when people try to mitigate or try to somehow, compare it to something that's incomparable. So when my father passed away, my stepfather passed away, somebody said to my mom, and the biggest thing that really was a sticking point, the person who said this was married to a therapist. And she said, oh, but you've been divorced before, so you know what it's like to lose a spouse.
Oh,
that's crazy.
It's not the same.
Not the same. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they will, all loss is traumatic, right? It just is, but, and loss is in the eye of the beholder. But when somebody would say, after my son died, I know how you feel. We lost my dog last year. And you're like, oh, I know that you lost your dog and I know that you loved your dog and so forth, but come on, really? It's,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not to, downplay losing a pet. And Pattie, it's very hurtful. It is not the same.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, just as someone with kids, anytime you are sharing stories about kids, you do not feel like you have to connect with them by sharing stories about your pets. That's a little insulting. It's not just grief. It's not just loss. If I'm talking about having a challenge with one of my kids at school, I don't need to hear how, my dog flunked obedience school at PetSmart. Just, oh, that's not the same.
That's going to be our new go-to for you.
Yeah.
Reading story. Yeah.
Ever considering 90% of the things I talk about at the office are my kids, I can't wait for you guys to take what I just said and run with it. But if you ever compare your
my dog is never going to get into doggy Harvard, so that's after that.
Listen, Tag will never get into any kind of school that's based off aptitude.
Yeah,
never.
For sure.
He's doing his best.
The other thing is people who feel like they need to explain it or justify it. That's
Yeah.
some of my favorites, is people who feel the need to step into the position of God and explain why God did this, which is horribly just riddled with hubris to begin with, but when they say things like, God needed another angel, or God needed more than you did, or, God never gives you more than you can handle. Oh, he does.
Yeah.
So it's just, so much of this is just in the category of just don't.
Yeah.
You don't need it. Nobody, God doesn't need anybody to stand up for him or explain him or speak for him, or, and I just think it's incredibly thoughtless and conceited.
I really don't like the they're in a better place. It is on one hand it is comforting for those who believe that, and I get that, but that's not the point. You're the one that's grieving, and you're not in a better place.
Right.
Yeah.
So being told that they're in a better, yeah, okay, great, but I'm here, and now here sucks way more than it ever did. I'm not in a better place. It feels like a
really big thing where everyone's like, but this isn't somehow this isn't any way about how you're feeling. But it's like, but I have to go through my daily tasks. I have to go do this. I have to do that. And the person I would turn to help with this is no longer why can't we be selfish about grief? That is a really big thing that's really puzzling. And I've always kind of struggled with. It's like, but you need a moment. You need to have it acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we?
Yeah.
I don't. So one thing I've ranted about, Pattie, that I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, because it's not one that I would necessarily, I wouldn't die on this hill, but for some reason I'm really bothered when people say somebody died before their time. And I get that if, when they're young, but who's to say whose time anybody's is? I could have dealt with a few more years of Betty White, but she was very old. Did she die before her time? Because she certainly probably had a lot more joy to give us. And I just who's to, it's just a weird expression to me. I've never really liked it, because it's who's to say. I understand when it's someone who they didn't get to live their full lifespan that we would think. They didn't die of natural causes, maybe. I don't know what it is, but it's that seems like such a throwaway thing to say about someone dying before their time. And then it makes me feel a lot of pressure, because here I am, and it's gosh, I better do some really good things, because if I've got all, if I died now, people said she died before her time, then it's well, that means I'm supposed to do a much more, what's wrong with what I've done now? Right? If I was struck down now, I think some people would look at my age and my health and be like, wow, she died before her time. But it's did I not do enough with the time that I had? Was we'd not just be you know what, but a life well lived.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just one I don't love. I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that still goes into the whole trying to come up with some kind of a justification or a explanation or what have you. The other thing is just all these a good death and a bad death, and there's this concept of disenfranchised grief, where you are taking my grief away and you are explaining it away and taking it away from me by making it sometimes suicide falls into this, a death from substance use disorder, those kinds of things, where it's not the noble death. It's not the fireman that ran into the building and lost his life, or the child who died of childhood cancer, or honor student who's killed in a car wreck, those kinds of things. These are quiet deaths, things that we don't talk about as much, or we don't know what to say, or it's, and it's, I had somebody say to me, well, your son died of a self-inflicted wound, because he died from his addiction. And it's how in the world is that helpful? How is that helpful to me? How is that helpful to the world? how, and where that
What is their
comes
goal
from.
with that?
Huh? Oh, that's cruel.
What is
It's
their
just
goal with that?
I have a theory.
to explain it away. There is a theory called the just world theory for all of you psychology students out there, that is in order for the world to make sense, in order for the world to be fair, then there has to be a reason why things happen. And if death is just a random sad event, then there's nothing that would prevent that from happening to me or anybody I love. So you've got to have this just world where everything happens for a reason. Everything makes sense. And, and I hate to break it to people, but not everything happens for a reason. Sometimes shit just happens. And sorry if you're not allowed to swear on this podcast.
Oh, no, we do all the time.
Yeah. because stuff does just happen. Awful things happen. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. So.
Yeah. So part of my theory in what I have seen is that, because what Pattie was saying, it's a cultural thing. We're very uncomfortable and we don't know what to say. And I think sometimes the things that come out of people's mouths, it's really more they're talking to themselves. Mm-hmm. They're trying to make themselves feel better, or they're trying to come, there's something that mitigates them for themselves, because it's very uncomfortable to be around a person who's grieving. It is in our society, mm-hmm. rather than in other cultures that accept this as a part of life, no matter how it turns up, and can just sit with that. And I think, I'm trying to remember, I wish I had researched this before we tackled this topic, but I think it was maybe from the Tao of Pooh. Are any of you like Winnie the Pooh? The Tao mm-hmm. of Pooh. Oh my gosh, you've got to look into this. And it's a part of it. And it has to do, I think now this shows up more when we talk about EQ, emotional intelligence, where trying to, help somebody or have an answer for them. And the way that I've always loved this expression from my mom. She was like, just kick the trash can with me. That's what I'm looking for. I don't need problem solving. And I don't know where she got that, if she came up with that herself or she heard somebody say that, but she's like, if you're feeling something and so you're kicking the trash can, I don't need you to resolve it. I don't need you to fix it. And in this case, it's not something you can fix. I just want you to kick the trash can with. I just want you to be there, and show me that you're there. And I think a lot about that with things, but I do think that it makes people so uncomfortable, at least in our culture, that half the time they're saying it for themselves. And the last thing I want to say on this particular topic, because I feel very passionate about it, is I think what's really sad for people who are grieving is that I feel like often we are put in a position where not only are we the ones grieving, but we're the ones that have to extend that understanding that other people they don't know what to say. So they're doing their best.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that term that your mom said. I'm going to steal that. So much of what people say is for their own benefit, not really for yours. And if it's this whole idea of, if it happened to you, it could happen to me. So it's mm-hmm. really kind of terrifying, and one of the things that we try to share with our clients, when we're working in the grief circles and the grief forums, is you don't have to be anything. You don't have to feel any way. You don't have to show up any particular way. This is about you right now, because we do try to make it comfortable for other people. We try to show up in a way that makes them more comfortable. Or if we think we're going to be the sad thing in the room, we just don't go, that kind of thing, and we're making allowances for everybody else's uncomfortableness, where we really need to cut ourselves some slack and cut ourselves some grace and say, it's okay to not be okay. And hopefully folks will adjust to us. not everybody is entitled to your story. Like I don't tell everybody everything that happened with my son, because I know in some circles that just won't be appreciated, and they don't deserve to hear all of that. He doesn't deserve to be exposed like that. And so you sort of find those safe places and where you feel like you can safely say what you need to say, and where it's not necessarily so. And again, that's not even the right way to say it. It's not that it's not safe to say, it's just they don't deserve this story right now. And I hate to sound kind of mean and exclusionary, but it is the way that it is. If it's not going to be understood or empathized with, then why bother? Why go there?
Well, and that makes me think of something I was telling you about recently when my stepdad had passed away. So my mom and my stepdad were very active in the local business community. And so after his passing, I moved back here to start my own law practice. So I was really followed in my mom's footsteps, including the American Business Women's Association that she was very active in. And so a local chamber of commerce I got involved in. And it was, for a while I was Jana High's daughter, which is a true honor. But then after a couple of years, she became Lorie Burch's mom. So she, sheepishly would be, smile about that, but still, be like, I'm still Jana High. And she is, and she always will be. But anyway, so someone that I was networking with at a network, this was in a bar at a networking event, crowded. We're in a group. We're all in. Here I am, a 27-year-old, starting my own law practice and moving back here because I wasn't even living here, grieving this tremendous loss, just trying to make this work. And this gentleman's like, "Hey, I didn't want to ask your mom about this, but how'd your dad die again?" And for those who know, it was a traumatic death. It wasn't even like where I can say it's like it's a death you have to explain. Because it was the leaking propane tank. He got stuck in the garage, knocked him out. It's more of a story than that, but just to give you some idea, it's not like cancer. Like I can't even and again, I'm not saying different kinds of death are different. It's just, it's a story that I don't want to explain. And so we, got used to just telling people it was an accident. And sometimes my mom would say car accident because the propane tank was in his car. And that's where she found him, because it just is like, why does that matter? Why do people have to know that? Yeah. And even, we never ask that when we're meeting with probate clients, and because we don't, sometimes they'll bring it up. And then if maybe they need to pursue a wrongful death claim or medical malpractice, but if they want to share that story, then we'll let them share that story. But, it's just not something, I don't know. I feel very uncomfortable, and maybe other people don't feel uncomfortable, but because I experienced that when I'm dealing with clients and they've lost someone, and then I struggle with, I don't want to seem disinterested, like I don't care, but it's like, that's something that I feel like if you want to share how this went down, you will share that with us, because it's certainly not relevant to the legal standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And when we were talking about that last night and you shared that story with me, I learned, because I was the grieving mom. So people responded to me way different than they did my husband. People don't normally ask him. They don't on a regular basis ask him, "How are you doing? How are you guys doing? Hey, you're going into the holidays. It's going to be rough." Nobody ever asks him that. And people would ask my other kids, "How's your mom?" And they're like, "But we lost him too." And so there's just this whole like hierarchy of how close are you to the person and why should you, which is why he asked you instead of asking your mom, and yet you're like, how insensitive can that possibly? Well, it's because it goes back to that. They just don't think, they just don't think. It's, sometimes if folks say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your son passed. How did he die?" And if I say, "Well, he died from addiction." closed, the shutters go down, that's the end of it. And nobody asks any more questions, and then, okay, this is not a safe place. And, that's the end of the conversation. It's so much more affirming when somebody says, I am so sorry. Would you like to talk about it? Or did he struggle for long? Or, anything that shows a modicum of understanding or literacy about, the topic. And as time goes on, fewer people mention his name, fewer people talk about him, and that's just like a constant dying, over and over again. I was, a friend of mine introduced me to her adult daughter a while back, and we were just sitting together at this table, and she said, "Do you have any pictures of Joel?" And it moved me to tears because nobody ever asks that, and the fact that she was so young and so, authentic and just said, do you have any pictures of him? And I was like, oh my God, do I? And it was just really great. But that just shows you how seldom that happens. The fact that it moved me like that.
Yeah. So a couple of things that what you said made me think of, and I want to go back to one thing and then kind of hit on really kind of passage of time. But also I really struggled having to refer to him as my stepdad, because I never did from the moment that my mom got married. I have my dad and I love him, and we have a much better relationship as an adult than I did growing up for various reasons, not pointing fingers at anybody. But just not super, super close. I was a mama's girl. And so from the moment my mom got remarried, he was dad. I only ever referred to him as dad. My other siblings where he was stepdad was always dad. And because I was now becoming more in the public scene where I was speaking, especially like with ABWA, I felt very disingenuous if I didn't make that distinction, because if I said, one day, when my dad passed away, and then I'm talking about antique cars that my dad restores in California, they're like, well, wait a minute, who are you talking about? Your story, you get your story straight. So I got more comfortable calling him stepdad, but that was always public facing. It was never something that I did. And I had to work with that. But then at the same time, it was something where people would ask me, well, were you close to him? When they would find out it was my stepdad, and that somehow it was less of a loss because he wasn't my biological dad. He was my stepdad. Mm-hmm. And I have a whole thing about, step parents and this and that. Anyway, I am a step parent as well as, a biological parent. And, I hope that it honors him, because I've tried to model myself as a step parent with those girls, that it's a greater honor because I choose to be your parent. I don't choose to be your parent's spouse. I'm choosing to also be your parent. Whereas with the other ones, I have to be. And I choose that too. But to me, I think we discount step parents so much, but that's a whole nother thing. But I think I was telling you, and sometimes I don't remember this because it's been a while. It's been over 20 years since this happened. And he died in August. And so the first of everything were holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. His birthday was in February, and all of us were rallying around my mom because really, really devastated, even to this day, devastated. But Father's Day, that was the first holiday that hit where I didn't have to see, okay, how's mom doing? And that would hit me hard. And it was almost a whole year later, June, 10 months later. And that's the one that really got me. Mm-hmm. And to what you're mentioning is that was the one I could have. That was the one where people could be like, where me and my siblings, like, how are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Instead of how's your mom doing?
Yeah. 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 That's a good point. I didn't even think about that because, Mother's Day has never been my favorite holiday, even before any of this happened. I always felt like it was forced adoration. You know, you will buy me a gift. You will take me out to eat. You will come over. You will, bleh. I just never liked those kinds of things. But it hit way different, after he passed away, because now, do I have 3 children? Do I have 2 children? It was a whole, really messes with your head. And, so that.
Well, I remember you were telling me a story about where somebody's only child had passed, and then them grappling with, am I even a parent? Can I even say I'm a mom? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can't even wrap my head around like how that must really impact somebody to have to think that way. I mean, it's tough stuff.
So there's this grief is a real. I have a friend who wrote a book called "Grief is a Sneaky Bitch," and I thought, what a great title for a book. But it messes with your mind, and there are things that you will lie awake at night suddenly thinking about. Like my friend who lost her only son. Am I still a mom? Well, of course you're still a mom, but these are the kinds of things that hit you, should I do this, or will people think that's weird? Or, do we acknowledge his birthday? Or, it's been, he's not really here having a birthday. Well, it's still his birthday. Just all kinds of those kinds of things that, until you've been there, you just don't think about those things. And again, kind of falls into the category of, be glad you don't think about that. But if we did, make this not such a taboo subject, I think people would be way, 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 way better off.
And I think that I think most people understand this, but we kind of lose sight of it, is that grief is not linear. It's not, the stages don't happen in order. And once those stages happen, they're not done. Mm-hmm. I think I'm probably going to say this wrong. So again, if there were a licensed therapist, they'd be able to say, I know what I'm talking about and you don't, Lorie. So I'd get in trouble here. But I remember something when I was talking to a therapist about, what is it? The part of the brain, the hippocampus.
Hippocampus?
That stores memories, and that it doesn't it doesn't know time.
Right.
So you can have a memory, and the feelings that you have can be as real as you felt in that moment, that even the passage of time is not something that with it. And we've only scratched the surface of what we understand with the brain itself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I learned personally. And, it's interesting, maybe serendipitous, that I started my estate planning and probate practice in the wake of losing my dad. But that wasn't intentional at all. I was already going to do that. In fact, my very last conversation with him was talking about moving back here from DC to start my own practice, and he had gone out looking at apartments for me. That was my last conversation with him. So this was already going to happen, but it did set such an interesting tone for me that a lot of people would say, how can you do that kind of law? And it wasn't what I intended to do initially, but you just, if you are fortunate enough or blessed enough, however you want to spin it, to find something that you were just meant to do. Mm-hmm. And having that experience and then meeting with people and doing that, like my good friend, Jamie Dugan, who's been on the podcast, does divorces, and she's very passionate about helping people through that. I would pull every hair out of my gorgeous head of hair, doing that kind of law. Mm-hmm. And thank goodness there's people like Jamie who have that passion and drive to do that. And for me, even though it was because of a lot of closed doors that I found this one, I really think that I was meant to do that. And one of the biggest things that I try to be very mindful of in my experience, and so that I really hesitate to ever give advice about anything. I know that sounds strange for a lawyer. But I try to be very clear when something's advice. And I don't feel like this is advice. It's just something I've experienced. And that is, the people around you are typically much better at checking in with you right in the wake of everything happening. Yeah. And that's I hate to say this because I'm probably going to contradict the whole point of our episode. I don't want to say that's the easiest part, but that's the busiest time. For a lot of people, because you're having to sort through certain things, memorials, contacting family, paperwork, like all of that. It's very busy.
Yeah.
And it's when that kind of dies down that it gets harder, but that's the same time when people are starting to taper off and not check on you. And again, a person who's grieving has to somehow make sense of that for them. They should go back to their lives. I mean, I can't imagine if like all our friends were, feeling this with us, but it is something where I try to be very conscious of when we know someone who's gone through a loss to check in every once in a while, at least in the, initial, months and years that follow, because that is something, that you don't know when it's going to hit you. And it could hit you just as hard 20 years later because something comes up that you say and you're kind of almost caught off guard by how it makes you feel as it did in the initial moments. And what is it? Grief is a sneaky bitch, you said?
Yeah.
That's so true.
And the whole, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross never intended that those stages of grief be viewed as linear. She was trying to put a definition on a emotion, Yeah. But because of the way it was presented, people will, come into our groups. They'll say, I ought to be over this by now. I should be better by now. I should be this by now. I should be that by now. And it's like, according to who? Who said? Who told you that? Because there is no time on it. And, it comes when it comes. I think probably there's two definitions I like to use when I'm working with folks. One is that it's like a wave, and the wave just comes and just out of nowhere overtakes you, knocks you down, and up is down and down is up, and you think you're not going to be able to stand and so forth. And then it ebbs away and you stand up and you live to fight another day. The other is that it's like a plastic bag full of glass shards, right? So those glass shards are poking through the plastic. That plastic can't hold those shards. So it's very painful and everything hurts and everything is a sharp edge and everything pokes. And then as time goes, you're sort of building something around that plastic bag. And so the shards are still in there. You're just able to hold it a little bit better, and that I think is comforting to people when they, for whatever reason, think, I ought to be over this by now. You don't ever get over it. How do you get over losing something that meant so much to you? And that's the flip side of love. Grief is the other side of love, right? If you didn't love something so much, you wouldn't grieve it so much. So how do you get over that?
Well, I actually find a lot of comfort in that, because actually one of my favorite quotes about grief comes from Marvel, the character Vision, who said, what is it? What is grief if not love persevering?
Yeah. And so it's this is going to get very esoteric, and it's something that it takes a long time to get to, but where you begin to befriend your grief, because it's the bridge between you and them. And you begin to not see grief as the enemy, but grief is your friend. Grief is that bridge. And if you, like I said, if you didn't love them, you wouldn't grieve them.
Yeah, there's actually, I wish I had looked this up too. This little, I don't know how recently it was, but the actor Andrew Garfield, who had lost his mother, they did this little segment on Sesame Street with him where, I don't know, was it Elmo that was the one that was like talking to him, asking about the mom, and then basically he was getting emotional, and Elmo was like, I'm sorry. He was like, no, I like asking, and he was like, I love talking about her like this. I really embrace the grief and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. Don't ever be afraid to ask about the person, unless you're asking in a dumbass, stupid way, like
how they died.
Yeah. But ask about them. Ask about, what did they like to do? What can you tell me about him? What was your favorite thing about them? sometimes when it gets super heavy and people are really in a dark place, that'll be a way to tell me what you loved about them. What was the best thing about them? I drive people crazy because my son was a hip hop artist and I have a lot of his music on my phone. So, they'll say, well, what can you tell me about him? Well, let me play you this song, and it's just him in a nutshell, but it really is. I love when people ask about him because, like I said, it gets fewer and further apart, the longer the time is.
So I think that's a great segue to talk about music and Joel's love of music. So we have to end the show with Sam and Sarah getting they're called swag. But anyway, so one of the things that Joel was passionate about, you're passionate about, Pattie, and well, coincidentally, the rest of us is music. Wow. And actually attending concerts. So I thought we could chat a little bit about concerts. What you don't know, Pattie, is that Swag has decided their segue. And so we'll start here. Why not?
Oh, good. Okay.
They have a list of dumb things to say to people at concerts.
Ooh, love it.
So go ahead. Let's see what you got.
I just read these for the first time. Oh, no.
So we're going to start off with number one.
Approved.
Nothing's approved.
So, number one. Can you please move? You stink.
Okay.
Number two. Stop singing so loud. Your singing is really bad. Can either be to a crowd or to the singer. Which you agree?
To the performer? Yikes.
Why are you there?
Well, auto-tune, baby.
Why are you so tall? Can you go to the back? Keep in mind the seats are paid and reserved, and it is not general admission.
Okay.
Can I have a sip of your drink? Which you just respond, who are you?
Wow.
Sarah would never do that. Hold on, does Sarah have
No,
a
Sarah
straw?
would never.
Sarah comes over with her own straw. Can I have a sip?
I would maybe do that.
Yeah, she would do that. Germaphobe here.
Who are we seeing again?
And lastly, can you shave your head next time? It's really hard to see over it.
Are you staying behind Lorie with her up hair?
I will confirm. Those are all stupid things to say.
Yeah.
So that actually reminds me. So I love No Doubt. And I saw them perform in Baltimore when they were together. And then I'll never forget, then Gwen goes off, does her solo career, but they reunited for a concert with Evermore. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, No Doubt is back together. So we went to the concert and there were so many youngsters that were saying, oh my gosh, Gwen Stefani's in a band? And I was like, maybe it's not the dumbest thing, but it was one of the most offensive things that I heard.
Okay, so here's my favorite, because my husband and I are big Pearl Jam fans. I have loved them from inception, and we have gone to buku numbers of concerts, and there are acceptable things you do at a Pearl Jam concert, and you can always tell the people who have never been to one before because they don't know, and it's so annoying. So they have this one song that's called Elderly Woman Between the Lunch Counter. It's the longest title in the whole Pearl Jam catalog. It goes on forever and ever. But it's usually like somewhere in the middle of the whole set, and everybody links arms. Now, don't touch me if you don't know me. I'm not that person, but there I become that person. Everybody links arms and they sway, and you're like, I just want to sing, and everyone yells, hello. And I was at a concert with my daughter, and I reached around and put my arm around this dude to the right of me, and he looked at me like, what is the matter with you? And I thought, oh my God, you're a virgin. You've never been to a concert. What's the matter with you? Who let you in here? It was terrible. Here's my other pet peeve. Girls that go to Pearl Jam concerts all decked out like they were going to go to a No Doubt concert or something like that, and they're
Gwen Stefani concert.
yeah, a Gwen Stefani concert. Their hair is all right and they're all dressed, just so instead of all grunged out like the rest of us. And you're like, and I cannot help it. I just have to goof on them. It's just it's a requirement. This is really bad for me to say after I've been talking all about empathy and care and showing concern.
I think it shows that, you understand where you're coming from.
You can only go so far, Pattie. That cup is full there. So it has to spill over somewhere else.
Absolutely. Thank
You're
you.
among friends here.
Thank you.
Pattie, I do have a question, though, about concerts.
Yes.
Would you ever go to a Nickelback concert?
Oh boy.
Maybe. Wait a minute. I'm trying to do the math in my head. Maybe in 2006, maybe.
Okay. Hold on. Let me add a little bit of context. What if your friend had just gone through a breakup and they were grieving and they asked you to go with?
Then yes, I would.
See?
This is how.
Okay, then here's my question.
Remind me of just who I really am.
Did that help her grief?
If that's the way she wanted to do it, then yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody's first concert. Sam.
Are we talking like kid concert or actual concert?
You know what? I just
Wiggles.
It was only
The Wiggles.
The Wiggles.
Yeah, it was the Wiggles.
Oh,
Was it the OG Wiggles
Yeah,
or
OG Wiggles. Yeah, I found the ticket when I was going through photos for baby photos. I have the ticket for it.
in New Zealand?
Yes. And then my first actual concert was Jonas Brothers. In
Nice.
2009.
If you say so. Nice. Okay, cool. Cynthia.
I can't remember their name.
Menudo.
It was. Hold up. No, this was like.
Menudo.
No, this was whenever I was in high school and we were going to like see a bunch of like screamo bands.
Oh Lord.
That was like one of the first ones.
You want me to start listing?
Oh, there was a specific one.
Are they popular?
I don't know how popular overall. But yeah, it was like a real loud screamo band, mosh pits and everything.
Wow.
Yeah,
All right,
it was intense.
Sarah.
Camping is intense.
Similarly, mine was a Pierce the Veil concert in
Nice.
High school.
Okay.
Hardcore.
I lost my glasses. My glasses fell off in the pit, and then I couldn't see the rest of the show.
You are done for.
Do you mosh at concerts?
When I was in high school.
That's wild. I was always
Anyways.
scared too.
Were you the height you are now in high school, or were you a late bloomer?
Yeah. No, I was. Yeah.
So you were 6'3" moshing with other high school.
Nice.
Yeah, 6'3".
She's not 6'3". She just, she would if she stood up straight.
Right.
I mean,
If only.
Possibly. Pattie, what was your first concert? I'm holding everything back to say something really shitty.
I know. Yeah, so it was the Flintstones. No, not really.
There, you said it for me. Okay, thank you.
No, it was the Monkees at Cal Palace.
For real?
Francisco, yeah, the Monkees. My poor dad drove 4 screaming girls to the Cal Palace in San Francisco to see the Monkees because I was the president of the first official Monkees fan club in San Jose,
Nice.
California.
Oh my
So
gosh.
myself and the rest of the board members, like we had a board, board members went to see the Monkees in San Francisco.
But you were the president of that
I was the
organization.
president. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fuck
Right.
you.
Wait, we're not going to talk about that part of our story. It's only a Pattie's villain origin story. We'll talk about it offline. All right, my first concert was in high school, and it was here in Dallas, and it was called The Greatest Rap Show Ever.
Joel
It
would
was
tracks.
Yeah, it was Oaktown 357, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature,
Good lineup.
MC Light,
Man,
Ghetto
oh,
Boys.
geez, wow,
and Public Enemy.
wow.
Yeah, I
Nice.
might be missing one or two because Queen Latifah discovered Naughty by Nature, so they were like brand new when they came out. And I think that's most of them there. But I got a Queen Latifah short. That's the one I went home with.
Nice.
Greatest rap show.
Should we
ever.
talk
So that
about
had to be like.
worst concerts you ever went to? What's the worst concert?
Oh.
So I may get flack for this. So hear me out. I like this band, but you should just stay at home and listen to them. They are like a live concert. I was a little underwhelmed. The Steve Miller Band.
Oh,
So I'm not criticizing their music or them. It's just that they just stood, not even like, how you doing, Dallas, Texas? Like, not even that.
yeah.
It was
I
just,
can
we're
see
going to play the song. Yeah.
I
So
can
that one
totally
was a
see
little
that.
underwhelming.
Yeah.
Okay. Next. Who's next?
I don't think
Well,
I have
I
one.
have two. I have two.
Yeah. I'm looking at my list and I
You have a
I have-
list?
No,
Go
I
back.
like how I am looking at my
Yeah.
list. Like
I
she's
have a
just
list.
scrolling.
have a
Well-
list. But I don't know if I've been to a bad one.
I mean,
Okay.
mine has to be maybe
Well,
one
Sarah
of
has
the
very low
other.
standards. We already established.
I mean,
She does.
I mean, there's one that I can think of, but if there's any K-pop enjoyers listening, I may get threats for it. So
Oh
I'm
yes,
not gonna say it.
our
I,
audience
Sam,
is K-pop just
Sam,
stands out
if-
there. No,
if we were to do a Venn diagram of
You never
listeners
know,
of this
man.
podcast and K-pop fans, those would be two independent circles.
just have Sarah do it.
It would
They-
just be me. It would just be me in the middle.
listen to the podcast.
No.
Sarah, you've got to do
Listen
that as the Venn diagram for you. As Patty will have to tell you a story about Sarah and Venn diagrams.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
But I won't say it. They were just semi-lackluster, even though, this is going to give it away. But 3 out of 4 of the members are fluent in English, and you wouldn't think so with how they
Oh,
were.
well, now I know who you're talking about.
Sam, that's a
The-
real.
Yeah, that anybody,
no
yeah,
one's gonna
anyway.
get.
But like the one who isn't like fluent in English was speaking the most, like in between songs and everything. And it was like, you guys clearly did not practice anything. And it's very obvious.
All right, we're gonna let Patty in. So, Cynthia, do you have a worst concert you've ever been to? I mean, you don't even
I mean,
remember.
probably one of those high school hard punk metalcore ones. Like
those can get real.
the first one was actually not bad, and I think the main headliner we were going to go see was the Chariot, but other ones probably.
It's usually like the emo shows where like they're local and there's not really a lot of people, so it's just kind of awkward. Like they're not like bad, it's just not fun.
Some of those were really good. I think it just
Yeah.
depends on the venue
Yeah.
because
Who did I say played with No Doubt? Did I say Evermore?
Yes.
you did
Yeah.
Evermore.
Okay, my bad. I saw Evanescence in concert against my will.
Ooh.
I mean, it was awesome, Sarah.
tell.
Sorry, it was really actually for them. It was good. Like if you like that music, I thought it was a very good concert. Just not my bag.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was Paramore.
Oh,
Paramore.
Oh,
I'm
Yeah.
jealous.
No, it was awesome.
yeah.
That was
On my
really-
list.
It was really good. A lot of fun.
I
A lot
thought
of
maybe
fun.
you were
So
going to say
my
Everclear.
apologies. Who?
Everclear instead of Evermore.
Oh,
no, that was just in her cup.
Just good one, Cynthia. All right, Patty, you
you.
said there's 2.
There's 2.
Okay.
The first one is Smashing Pumpkins, and it was at a real dive place in San Diego. I mean, really dive place.
Tracks.
Like you did not sit on the ground. You didn't do any. You didn't even lean against the wall. It was that bad. And Billy Corrigan, who I can't. Sorry if he's your thing, but I can't stand him. Spitting on the mosh pit, spitting into it. It was like disgusting. Like, who do you think you are? So that was number one. Number two was we saw Aerosmith at what was then Coors Arena in San Diego. And we've seen Aerosmith a number of times, but this particular time, Kid Rock was opening for them. And
no.
Yeah, I was seeing Sam, and everybody just cringes, and he was just awful. And normally the opening bands, they usually had really good folks opening for them, but he went on and on and on and on, and my husband and I were on this health fast purge thing, so we weren't drinking, and it was like there is no way to get through any amount of time with Kid Rock sober. He was terrible. Every gross thing about him, he was just gross, awful, bleh, terrible.
Oh my gosh.
Terrible.
Man.
I was going to wrap it up there, but I got to share one more story because I just thought of it.
We did the worst, but have we done the best?
Oh, we
Yeah,
haven't.
let's talk about that.
Okay.
Oh. Earl Jam.
All right, we'll end with the best. That's a good way to end. Let me share this quick story. This may be a band that only Pattie knows. Styx.
Oh yeah.
Nope. And it's
Sounds familiar.
Okay. So 80s band, but I was mostly a small child in the 80s. So I was listening to the Smurfs. So fast forward to, it's probably high school. And my brother Terry, he worked for a liquor distributor that would get lots of concert tickets. And so a friend of my sister's had said, Styx is going to be in town. Can you get me tickets? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Okay. And so they bailed, like my sister and the friend bailed. I don't know if my sister bailed or, but anyway, my brother Terry was like, hey, so I got tickets to Styx. You want to go? And I'm like, sure. Cause Terry was the one who went with me to the greatest rap show ever. It's the least I could have done for Terry. So I'm like, yeah, the one song that I know is Mr. Roboto. That's it. They never played it. And I like, it was not good. This probably was the worst concert I've ever been to, frankly, because I love the Steve Miller Band. I love their music, but this was just bad. And I didn't know any of these songs really. And I don't think it's even the original lead singer anymore. And we were there through 2 encores and still did not get Mr. Roboto.
Dang.
Yeah, they were being, haughty, right? They were like, no, we're not going to please the crowd.
Right.
We're not going to please.
Right. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. All right. Best concert. And then we got to get you all back to work.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
All right, I'll go.
Sarah.
I'm going to say Lord and really any Fall Out Boy concert. I can't decide.
Yeah,
Oh,
Fall Out Boy's
all right.
really good.
Not Shania Twain.
Ah, man. All right. Yeah. It's hard to pick.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Sam.
I think mine is a mix between also Fall Out Boy because they're very good live. My Chemical Romance, ETS, and then of course Taylor was very good.
Yeah.
Our girl.
Look at Sarah. Did you forget that little thing we did like 2 years ago? where we had a
Literally 2 years ago tomorrow.
I
know.
We were leaving my house, and like one of my neighbors is like, "Wow, this looks like a bachelorette party about to happen." We're like, "No, we're just going to a concert."
Yeah. Cynthia, best concert.
Ooh, it's in between one of the most recent Motion City soundtracks or Blink-182.
Oh, I would Blink's really. I mean,
Okay.
My Chemical Romance and Blink were on the same concert, so I'm counting that as a 2.
I saw Pierce the Veil and
Pierce the Veil's very
Blink-182 together when they were here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
Me too was
That's good.
in my
Oh,
backyard.
maybe
I-
Parade's also very
before Patty's going to bring it home, but I have to do some different eras. So, gosh, this is hard. So, I mean, definitely Eras tour. Like, there's just nothing that's going to
Yeah.
like that's just was an incredible experience.
I
But
feel like that's
I
an
was-
experience,
I was-
not a concert.
yeah, for real.
yeah.
I was second row at the Paul Abdul concert. And
Nice.
girl can put on a show. That was really, really good. And then I have seen Dolly Parton in concert like 3 or 4 times.
Oh.
Nice.
And she's just so fun. She's just so great. Her jokes are so she's just that is going to be you want to talk about grief, someone's going to need to check on me constantly. But maybe she'll outlive me, I don't know. But her husband of like, I don't know, 60 years or something like that just passed away. And she's someone who gives me hope and humanity, that someone that just genuinely kind and talented can exist. So anyway, but she also she can play like every instrument with these nails that are like this long.
Yeah, how? I don't know.
She's so cool.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
very
But anyway, so those are, I could probably go on and on, but we'll go with that. Patty, what do you got? Pearl Jam?
Yeah, Pearl Jam, absolutely. I mean, almost any Pearl Jam concert was great. So we had tickets to go see them in 2020, and that obviously got canceled because there was this other little thing called coronavirus going on. So that got canceled, postponed and it was in my birthday in April, and it got postponed to October, thinking everything would be over by then. And it was on my husband's birthday. And we're like, okay, that's cool. Well, then it got postponed again. So then we had to go back, it was like, 2 years later, whatever, it came around. Well, then so coronavirus is all over, everything's done. Now we're going to have this concert. Everyone's happy. We show up at Oakland Arena, and and the drummer had come down with COVID that day, so he wasn't playing.
No.
And it was very cool though, because everyone understood, and they came out, and Eddie is like, fuck this virus, come on, this is terrible. And they had near the end of the concert, they actually brought a guy up out of the audience to play. Said, is anybody here a drummer? And Sky goes, yeah, I can play. So he came, and it was very cool. They closed out with that guy, which was so Pearl Jam community stuff. It was very, very cool. So even though the concert was not their best, it was just really, really the best. But there are so many of their concerts where every time I was like, I didn't want it to be over. You've been there for hours. You didn't want it to be over. So
yeah,
I would go tomorrow if there was one. So,
yeah. Well, I think one of the best ways to help navigate grief is music. And so hopefully you will all see the connection. Pattie, thank you so much for being a part of this, and really just a part of my life.
Well,
Will you cut that out? Will you cut that part, Sarah?
like go live.
But anyway, thank you for joining us, Pattie.
thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. And just to cover all our bases about what you just heard, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and tell your friends about us. We do webinars and live events. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer, or maybe you just want to say hi, hit the link in the show notes or go to burch-law.com/podcast and fill out the contact form.
Much better.
Yeah, I thought that had a lot of energy.